What's up, people? Welcome back to the Boxing Objective. Now, today's video is going to have next to nothing to do with boxing, but I would like to talk about a topic that pretty much is going to affect all sports potentially in the coming years. I'm going to be talking about the first ever transgender athlete to compete in the Olympics. I'm talking about, of course, Laurel Hubbard. Now, before I begin, I just want to make a short disclaimer just to let you know that I am going to report on this with an idea of just trying to create awareness and understanding to this subject. I would just like to let you know that I don't particularly support anybody having to hide away because of who they are and being made to feel some type of way about who they are because it doesn't fit with what society deems as normal. I think being judged is something that none of us enjoy or like to have happen to us. So maybe when we look at others, we should wonder what they're going through and understand and respect that everybody has to walk their own path. And we have no idea what it might take for somebody to get through what life is giving them from day to day. So I'm not judging anybody from the transgender community. It's just I want to understand exactly what it is that should happen in regards to sports and the transgender community going forward. I don't expect everyone to agree with my opinions, but I think there is a lot of interesting questions being raised. And I think they're legitimate questions. And I don't necessarily think that these questions are phobic. I think we live in a time where people create more awareness about more subjects than ever before. And we as human beings seem to strive to just do better. And we don't always achieve that. It's not always a smooth road to walk down when you're on the way to try and improve things. But to not have the conversation because we're worried about who we might offend, in my opinion, is ridiculous because I don't see how we're supposed to make any progress. The human race needs to talk about things. We need to discuss it, and I'm prepared to talk about it today. Now, Laurel Hubbard is a competitive weightlifter who was born Gavin Hubbard in 1978. She's from New Zealand and she's currently 43 years old. She's been active since 1998 in the clean and jerk competition and transitioned to a woman in 2012. She didn't get to compete as a woman until 2017. In 2019, Laurel sparked controversy after winning gold at the Pacific Games. Now, it was said that Laurel did in fact meet the criteria to qualify as a woman due to the hormone replacement therapy that she had been receiving since 2012. Now, in 1966, the European athletics started to do sex testing because it was believed that some of the best female athletes from the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe were actually men. So they began to do sex testing. And I think they introduced it into the Olympics in 1968, 2 years later. Now, this brings me to my first question, and probably my most relevant question throughout this whole video. Laurel transitioned from a man to a woman at 34 years old and has been a woman now for 9 years. And at the time of competing for the very first time as a woman, had been receiving the hormone treatment therapy for 5 years. Now, the treatment is known to reduce testosterone and also alleges to reduce muscle mass. Now, with the treatment administered, it gives the body estrogen and blocks the testosterone. But after multiple years of having testosterone in your body, could this not have in any way have increased the person's strength? Now, the data that has been collected based on what the requirements are for a person to compete as a female has a certain criteria, and meeting that criteria involves the levels of testosterone in a woman's body. Now, it's obvious that this part of the whole transition can be controlled by medicine and it can be changed and altered. But one thing, well, more than one thing that cannot ever be changed or altered in anybody is the size of somebody's limbs, their height, or the size of their internal organs. Now, men's internal organs are anatomically bigger than women's. We have a bigger lung capacity and we have a bigger heart that is able to pump more blood around our body, therefore giving us an anatomical advantage in competitions or tasks that involve strength. Now, there was an interesting case many years ago regarding a competitor from South Africa by the name of Samenya. She's a middle distance runner who has won 2 Olympic gold medals, 3 gold world championship medals, 2 golds in the Commonwealth Games, and 5 golds in the African Championships. Now, she blew most of her opposition out of the water, and the manner in which she would win her races and based on her appearance along with that made people question her gender. Now, it was revealed that she did in fact have very high levels of testosterone, and after some very invasive testing and questioning and scrutiny, it was later revealed that she was in fact an intersexual. An intersexual is somebody who is born with several variations in gender characteristics, including chromosomes, hormones, and genitals that do not fit the typical definitions of male or female. Now, you can imagine the kind of controversy this sparked, especially among her fellow competitors who thought that this was an unfair advantage. In the coming years, she lost a legal case with the IAAF, who decided that if she wanted to continue to compete, she would have to take medication to reduce her testosterone levels. They put this in place to create a level playing field throughout athletics. And as a result, the clear advantage that she had faded away. And unfortunately, she didn't manage to qualify for the up-and-coming Tokyo Olympics. Now, she was born this way, and even though she had clear advantages in the sports that she took part in, these were the advantages that were given to her on the day she was born. So, is that fair? I don't know, because if we want to talk about somebody who was born with natural advantages and characteristics that aided them massively in the sport that they took up, then we've got to mention Michael Phelps. He was put on this earth to swim, and he was born with 2 incredible God-given talents that have aided him in winning 23 Olympic gold medals. He also won 26 gold medals at the World Championships for swimming. Now, he's 6'4", but his wingspan is like 6'7", and his body naturally produces less lactic acid, which means he has a much faster recovery time than anybody else. Now, is that fair? I mean, he's like the real life Aquaman. Now, another name that springs to mind is Serena Williams. Now, she had a completely dominant career, winning 39 Grand Slam titles, 4 Olympic gold medals, and due to her power and strength, people even questioned her gender, but she is in fact 100% female. Now, there's an interview out there where she's asked, what would happen if you were to play against men? And this is what she said.
Because Andy Murray, he was been joking about myself and him playing a match, and I'm like, Andy, seriously, like, are you kidding me? Because for me, tennis and men's tennis and women's tennis are completely almost 2 separate sports. So I'm like, if I were to play Andy Murray, I would lose 6-0, 6-0 in 5 to 6 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, because no, it's true. It's true. It's a completely. Really? It's a completely different sport. The men are a lot faster, and they serve harder, they hit harder. It's just a different game. And
so, with everything that I've discussed in this video, I mean, what's the verdict? What should happen going forward? It is a very difficult question to answer, and I, for one, I'm glad that I haven't got the responsibility of deciding. Many of you share some very extreme views on the subject that we've spoken about, and many of you have more liberal views on the subject that we've spoken about. But regardless of how you feel about it, this subject isn't going away, and there's a strong possibility that it could begin to affect other sports. Who knows? There could end up being a transgender boxer. Now, this is just really all about including everybody, because everybody deserves to know where they should stand, you know? And I said it earlier about, people not having to hide away because, who you are doesn't fit with other people. And as long as you're not hurting anybody or doing anything against the law, then absolutely, you shouldn't have to hide away. You should feel free to be you, regardless of who you are. And everybody deserves to know where it is that they should stand and should have the right to go about and do whatever it is that they want to do, whatever they want to achieve in their life. I mean, it's possible. Isn't this the same for everybody? So I believe that something does in fact need to change. I think that women in general have it hard enough competing in whatever field it is they're doing, especially in sports, because what women want is for their sports, their version of these sports to grow. And I think it's challenging enough without having to compete with women who are not biologically women. So I think something needs to happen. I mean, isn't this why they invented the Paralympics? So let's hope that something does happen that everybody can be happy with. Because in my opinion, at the moment, this is good that they're trying to include everybody, but right now it just seems to be at the cost and expense of women. And it's strange because the transgender women seem to do very well transitioning into female sports. But the number of transgender men seeing much success, I mean, I don't recall hearing of any that are doing too well competing against men. So it's definitely something to look at. But guys, thank you very much for tuning in. And my next video will be about boxing. But that's all I got to say on this one. So thanks a lot, people. Peace.